my name is Audrey. Today we're going to be talking about types of evidence, specifically direct evidence. So, evidence. It's what's used to prove a defendant's guilt or innocence. A strong or weak piece of evidence can make or break a case. So, because it is so detrimental in determining a conclusion to a case, a prosecution, you're really going to want to make sure that your evidence is very logical, very thorough. So, as I mentioned, and as you know, there are several forms of evidence, including demonstrative, circumstantial, and today's topic, direct evidence. So, direct evidence is evidence that proves a fact and doesn't require the jury or trial lawyer to make an inference. It doesn't need an inference to be made because it directly proves a fact, which is unlike circumstantial, which requires an inference to be made in order to reach a conclusion. So, this means that direct evidence can fully, with very little reasonable doubt, prove a fact directly. And thoroughly, which I mentioned earlier is very important. So, however, direct evidence does have its limits. It can only be used to prove one fact. It can't prove all facts, it can just prove the one fact that it directly relates to. So, it's not this is what happened, then this proves everything. No, it's just this is what happened, it proves it's one thing. The class text had some great examples of this. Example number 1 was the surveillance footage which shows the car running the red light. Now, this does not prove why the defendant read the red light. All that it proves directly is that the defendant did indeed run the red light. So, the second example that the class text pointed out was blood alcohol test results coming back over the legal limit. So, all that this can be used to prove is that the defendant was indeed over the legal limit. It doesn't prove that their driving was impaired, in which case it could be pointed out that some people have higher tolerances and would probably be fine, but this doesn't mean that they weren't over the legal limit too. So it doesn't prove that their driving, if it was reckless, was because of how much they drank or how little they drank, it depends, but all that it does indeed prove is that they were over the legal limit. So while I just mentioned the surveillance footage and the blood alcohol tests, there are so many more different forms of direct evidence. It's not that it's just broad, but there's lots of things that fit under it. For example, confessions, eyewitness testimonies, photographs, like even video footage like the surveillance that I mentioned earlier, but photographs of the crime scene can be used as direct evidence as well. DNA, fingerprints, those are also two very good ones, and then physical evidence and so much more. So, expanding upon those examples, one that I really thought was very interesting was witness testimonies. I always just thought it was just what the witness saw, but actually digging further into what witness testimonies can include, like the National Institute of Justice pointed out, a witness testimony can include more than what the witness just saw. It can include what the witness heard, what they even smelled, what they think, and even what they created after the fact. Now, that threw me for a loop for a little bit, but that actually means that the witness can create something after the crime that represents it, like a child drawing where they were hurt. So, moving away from examples, and we're going to refocus back on what ways that direct evidence can be used. So, or how they can actually be applied. They can be used to prove a defendant was at the scene of a crime, which this can be done with DNA, fingerprints, so much more. But if there's no actual photographer or eyewitness proof, then DNA and fingerprints can be ran and found, and you can't deny those. So that would be a very solid piece of direct evidence, landing someone at the scene of a crime, proving their guilt. And another way that I found really interesting was that direct evidence can be used to prove intent. Like in the U.S. versus Yoshida case in the class text, All the other pieces of evidence were very circumstantial, like I mentioned earlier. Sure, she could have just been at the wrong place, the wrong time, walking in front of the wrong group of people, going to the wrong gate, boarding at the wrong time, sitting in front of the wrong group of people. But that's very, very unlikely that that was all just simply a coincidence. And having that direct piece of evidence that she had the 3 aliens' boarding passes inside her clothing on her person, that secured her connection to the people. That really was a good, solid piece of direct evidence that was used to support the circumstantial evidence that Yoshida was, in fact, escorting the aliens illegally into the United States. So, in conclusion, direct evidence it can be used as one of the most influential pieces of evidence in the case. As the National Institute of Justice says, direct evidence is very straightforward. It can include numerous types of evidence. It can prove a fact directly. And that being said, thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.